On November 5th, the freight yard outside a sleepy Russian town came alive, not with arriving trains, but with fire. Locomotives lay twisted under flame. Railway lines hissed as molten steel sagged to earth. In that darkness, the war machine paused. For Russia's frontline commanders, a delivery never meant to be delayed was now stalled in embers. In Moscow, intelligence desks buzzed. In the barracks, soldiers waited. And for one vast nation, the wires that carried its assault across Ukraine were fraying at the seams. The event did not begin overnight. Since late October, partisans, Russian citizens turned insurrectionists, and anti-Kremlin movements have waged sabotage campaigns across key railway hubs. According to the Freedom of Russia Resistance Movement, and reported by Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine, HER, dozens of locomotives and rail relay stations have been deliberately destroyed. These are not symbolic stunts. Trains carry 70% of Russia's military logistics. Destroy one engine, derail one ammunition train, and you break the link between Moscow's orders and the guns at the front. What happens when the line your enemy depends on sells them out first? In Bryansk, Samara, Murmansk, hotbeds of rail sabotage, the blast of incendiary devices echoed against the vast Siberian night. One video posted on Telegram showed a pair of hoses pouring fuel beneath the cab of a train as its crew attempted to halt. Moments later, the locomotive exploded. According to HUR, the control and power systems of the engine were incinerated, making repair impossible. Overnight, a freight line transporting shells from the Urals stopped. 500 shells meant for the front no longer moved. A resupply schedule had been torn out of the calendar. Behind the strike lies a needle-hard logic. War machines rely on movement as much as firepower. Russia's mass formations, its thunderous artillery, its mechanized pushes all assume supplies, repairs, fuel, ammo. In the Kremlin's calculations, terrain and enemy mattered. Logistics hardly did until now. In the northeast, in the small settlement of Novovietkinsky district, crews responded to a fire at a rail station on November 2. Emergency services arrived late. Within hours, smoke visible for miles. Ukraine's intelligence claimed multiple relay cabinets and track segments had been sabotaged there, forcing detours of heavy rail traffic. Each detour costs time. Each time supply arrives late, its effect multiplies. Tanks idle, artillery falls silent, morale frays. At the front, in eastern Ukraine, commanders reported sluggish resupply. Officers whispered of equipment shortages. Ukrainian spotters noted faulty Russian gun positions, rusted tank treads, unmanned observation posts. Some Russian units circulated audio. 20 in the room, silent, 500 code, said one intercepted clip, 500 being military shorthand for refusal. The system was still massive, still thunderous, but its wheels were stalling internally. Inside Russia, the cracks are spreading wider. In 2021, before the war's full escalation, the domestic security budget stood at around 2 trillion rubles per year. By 2025, it has doubled, yet the regime struggles to quiet dissent. Recruit after recruit begs, "They throw us out there like meat, we don't want to die." Videos of wounded conscripts handcuffed to stretchers circulate on social media. The logic of capture ground gain over human life drives reckless assaults. Emerging partisans chant, "Putin's scum will live in fear and forget what security means." The war was supposed to be external. Now, it turns inward. When your front line turns inwards, who will hold the line? For Moscow, the consequences are systemic. Russia's surface rail network spans tens of thousands of kilometers, but the rail-based logistics for the war rely on uninterrupted movement of locomotives, fuel, flat cars, and spares. HER says the sabotage campaigns have begun in multiple regions: Bryansk, Rostov, Komi Republic, Ural rails. Track segments ripped, relay cabinets burned, supply trains stopped. When soldiers at the front complain, "No ammo, no fuel," that begins in the countryside, under cloak of night. Meanwhile, in Kazan, stations report constant breakdowns. The state rail company allows publicly that 15% of its fleet is idle due to parts shortages, many traceable to sanctions on components. Partisans move quickly. Delayed freight becomes a target, and every burning rail yard echoes directly in the sound of idle tanks. Lecture halls in Moscow staff have been transformed into logistics war rooms. Engineers debate rerouting, improvising conversions, and raising security budgets to 4 trillion rubles, twice what they spent 3 years ago, just to hold stations they once marched through. But money doesn't incent morale. Conscript after conscript says,
The cities are burning again on Ukraine's eastern front. The Russian armor storms forward like desert raiders, using fog as a shadow. The Russian troops are now rushing forth. Pokrovsk, once a mining hub, has been turned into a graveyard of machines and men. Our next report gets you the latest from the battle zone of Pokrovsk.
It looks straight out of a movie scene. Russian forces ride into a key Ukrainian city through fog on battered vehicles.
I don't want to die. I promised my mother I'd return. Some surrender to Ukrainian forces lest they be killed. The human cost is writing itself across videos, telegram posts, and the ground. The psychological dimension cannot be overstated. The Russian state's narrative of victory and glory fights against pictures of burning rails, broken trains, and coffins. One influential Russian war reporter noted, in a European army, defeat begins when 30% of its forces are lost. In the Russian army, it's 70%. That level of attrition is baked into propaganda because the truth is, control is weakening. Hook, when your own people burn your trains, what's left to defend? Beyond the internal revolt, Ukraine is playing the chessboard patiently. One operation late October near Tokmak derailed a Russian military train loaded with cargo and destroyed 70 meters of track. Another in the Ural region targeted rail junctions and communication towers. Each act focuses not just on what moves to the front, but how that movement is enabled in the rear. Movement is vulnerability. Combined with deep strike operations on fuel pipelines and depots, the actual front line begins far from shelling on a ridge. Rail yards in Russia become strategic high-value targets. One pipeline near Moscow's suburbs, carrying millions of tons of diesel and jet fuel annually, was hit on Nov 1. Every station burnt, every train derailed, ripples through the system. As day breaks in the factory towns of the Volga and Ural, repairs begin. But each repair costs money, time, and resources. Resources pulled from the front. Each morning, the front line hears of a canceled shipment. Each night, a whine of burning steel. Russia may still be vast, may still have weight, but war is also what you don't move. Hook, what does the vastness of territory matter? When your supplies stop moving. For Ukraine, this shift matters strategically. A mechanized Russian counteroffensive needs fuel, spares, logistics. The chain is only as strong as its weakest rail yard. Opposition movements inside Russia are not heroic icons. They are practical disruptions. They are knights attacking the supply line instead of the front line. Within Kremlin walls, predictions grow darker. Analysts in Moscow list growing desertions, broken units, squads erased from payrolls. The term 500's code for refusal to fight has entered command chatter. Soldiers refusing orders, radio silent, units abandoned. Meanwhile, families at home receive no letters, only rumors. The war that was to be swift has turned into a grinding drain. That drains men, materials, and belief. The world watches too. NATO partners display images of smoldering Russian trains. Political debates shift from offensive support to logistics denial. For the first time, Russia's vulnerabilities feed into the messaging of Western capitals. May we shift from backing Ukraine's offense to undermining Russia's momentum. The saboteurs inside Russia unwittingly become strategic force multipliers for Kyiv. He fires less, and firepower wins wars. So what happens next? You can expect Moscow to ramp up security, reinforce rail corridors, move supplies by truck or barge, but that means slower, smaller, more expensive movement. You can expect Ukraine to keep targeting the seams, relays, bridges, yards, pipelines. You can expect the war line to compress, supply less visible, decisions more tactical. For viewers at home, here's the final truth. War isn't won only on ridges and trenches. It's won in yards, track beds, supply logs. If the locomotive stops burning, the missile doesn't fly. If the rail doesn't move, the front stalls. In Russia's case, the internal revolt has turned logistics into a battlefield. When the trains burn and the men refuse, the monster behind the map loses control. If you found this breakdown meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to Tactical Signals. Click the bell to stay ahead of the headlines, dive into hidden strategies, and follow the conflict where the maps don't always show it. What supply system should we dive into next? Drones, deep strike missiles, or logistics networks? Let us know in the comments. Stay sharp, stay informed, and thanks for watching.